Most muscle car fans know the Camaro, Chevelle SS, and GTO. But what about the forgotten GM legends that slipped through the cracks and were lost to time? In this hour-long episode, I'm uncovering 30 of the most underrated GM muscle cars ever built. These hidden beasts packed big block power, bold engineering, and wild performance, but were buried by bad timing, internal politics, or a lack of customer love. If you've ever seen one of these in the wild or been lucky enough to drive one, share your story in the comments below. Like and share if you love sleeper muscle, and don't forget to subscribe to Rare Wheel Stories for more lost V8 legends. Number 30. 1970 Chevrolet Nova SS. In the height of the muscle car era, bigger often meant better, or at least more memorable. The Chevelle SS, the GTO, and the Charger all stole the spotlight with their brash styling and massive engines. But tucked away in Chevrolet's lineup was a smaller, leaner street fighter that delivered serious performance without the fanfare, the 1970 Chevrolet Nova SS. As Chevy's compact A-body platform, the Nova had already evolved from a tame commuter car into something with bite. By 1970, the Nova SS could be optioned with a 350 cubic inch V8 that pumped out a respectable 300 gross horsepower. While it might not seem earth-shattering on paper compared to the monstrous 454s of the time, the Nova's secret weapon was its lightweight construction. With a curb weight under 200 pounds, the Nova SS offered a superior power-to-weight ratio than many of its heavier GM cousins. That meant this humble two-door coupe could keep pace with much flashier competition in real-world conditions, whether at a stoplight or a quarter-mile drag strip. What also set the Nova SS apart was its no-nonsense attitude. It didn't need elaborate stripes, shaker hoods, or scoops to look mean. With subtle badging, modest trim, and a stance that spoke softly but carried a big stick, the Nova became the muscle car for those who didn't want to announce themselves but had no problem proving a point when the light turned green. Yet, despite its strengths, the Nova SS has largely faded from the muscle car spotlight. It never quite achieved the cult following of the Camaro or Chevelle, in part because it was considered a budget performer. Many Novas were driven hard and discarded young, making survivor cars rare and undervalued in today's collector circles. Additionally, its close ties to economy car roots made purists overlook its true muscle potential. But make no mistake, this little brawler was one of GM's most balanced and accessible muscle machines. The 1970 Nova SS didn't just talk the talk, it walked the walk, leaving rubber and surprise in its wake. And while history may have pushed it to the sidelines, those who remember it know it could punch well above its weight class. Number 29. 1966 Chevrolet Chevel Z16. In an era when muscle cars were defined by brawn and boldness, the Chevrolet Chevel Z16 stood as a rare and refined brute, a prelude to the storm that would follow in later years. Though most people associate the Chevelle SS 396 with the late 1960s, it was the 1966 Z16 that truly lit the first fuse. Built in extremely limited numbers, only 200 Z16 units were produced. The car was a covert missile cloaked in mid-size steel. At its heart was a specially tuned 396 cubic inch V8, conservatively rated at 375 horsepower, though many claimed real output was well over 400. This engine wasn't just borrowed from the Corvette parts bin, it was fortified to deliver brutal acceleration, especially when paired with the Monte close ratio 4-speed manual and heavy-duty suspension setup. The Z16 also came standard with power brakes, power steering, and a 12-bolt rear axle, equipment that would become iconic in the muscle world just a few years later. Where the Z16 truly distinguished itself was in its balance of civility and savagery. It wasn't just a stripped-down street brawler, it came fully loaded with bucket seats, deluxe trim, and a padded dash, essentially combining the elegance of a personal luxury car with the explosive power of a full-on drag racer. That dual nature made it unique among GM's performance offerings of the time. Despite its incredible performance and craftsmanship, the Chevelle Z16 was virtually forgotten by the mainstream. Its extremely low production numbers meant few enthusiasts even knew of its existence, and its visual similarity to lesser Chevelles meant it rarely stood out. By the time Chevrolet went full steam with the SS 396 in 1966 and beyond, the Z16 was already fading into myth. Today, the Z16 remains one of the rarest and most mysterious muscle cars GM ever built. It wasn't just a prototype, it was a statement, a declaration that Chevrolet could blend luxury, performance, and precision in one singular machine. And though it slipped through the cracks of history, those lucky enough to experience it know it was nothing short of perfect. Number 28, 1967 Chevrolet Camaro Copo. In the world of muscle cars, few vehicles carry the mystique and rebellion of the Copo Camaros, built between 1967 and 1969. These weren't your average showroom muscle cars, they were backdoor monsters, created through a bureaucratic loophole in GM's own corporate policy. At the time, General Motors had an internal mandate that restricted engines larger than 400 cubic inches from being installed in cars smaller than full-size models. But a few savvy dealers and engineers found a workaround through the Central Office Production Order System, Copo. The most famous of these Copo Camaros came in 1969, when performance dealer legends like Don Yanko and Fred Gibb exploited the system to order Camaros with the 72 engine, a ferocious 427 cubic inch V8 borrowed from the Corvette. This engine was rated at 425 horsepower, but real-world numbers and drag strip results often suggested even higher output. These Camaros were stealth fighters, externally resembling their more modest SS siblings, but equipped with heavy-duty suspensions, upgraded cooling systems, and 12-bolt rear ends to manage the punishing torque. Though Copo Camaros were factory-built, they felt more like factory-sanctioned rebellion. They came without the flashy stripes and branding of Z, 28s, or SS models, which made them true sleepers on the street. And that was precisely their appeal. They were built for serious racers who knew how to read between the lines of the order form. Despite their raw capability and rarity, Copo Camaros were largely forgotten for decades. Many were raced, wrecked, or simply driven hard and discarded, and their subtle appearance made them hard to distinguish from lesser models. It wasn't until collector circles began piecing together their unique origins that they gained recognition as among the most potent Camaros ever built. The Copo program was GM's quiet rebellion against its own rules, and the Camaros it spawned were the ultimate insider's secret. They weren't built for mass appeal, they were built to dominate. And in doing so, they became one of the most underrated legends in muscle car history. Number 27, 1969 Chevrolet Camaro Zlone. In the vast jungle of late 1960s muscle cars, the 1969 Chevrolet Camaro Zlone stood not only as a predator, but as a rare, almost mythical creature. Lightweight, powerful, and built with one purpose in mind: domination. Conceived not for the streets, but for the strip, the Zlone Camaro was the ultimate expression of GM's performance engineering when all bureaucratic restraints were tossed aside. At its core was a hand-built, all-aluminum, 427 cubic inch V8 engine, originally developed for Can Am racing, that pushed out a rated 430 horsepower, though real output soared past 500. This wasn't just any big block, it was a technological marvel for its time, weighing roughly 100 pounds less than the cast-iron equivalents, giving the Zlone an unparalleled power-to-weight ratio. Designed to be ultralight, the engine allowed the car to accelerate like few factory muscle cars could, turning in quarter-mile times in the high 11s with minimal tuning. Backed by heavy-duty driveline components and a reinforced suspension, the Zlone was engineered to endure the brutality of NHRA superstock racing straight from the dealership lot. Yet, only 69 units were produced, making it one of the rarest production Camaros ever built. Its astronomical price tag, largely due to the exotic aluminum engine, meant most customers walked away before even hearing what it was capable of. With the average buyer balking at the cost, many Zlones sat unsold for months or were sold at a loss. Its understated appearance also worked against it. Most looked nearly identical to standard SS or base Camaros, giving no outward clue of the firepower hiding beneath the hood. There were no flashy graphics, no wild badges, just a quiet menace waiting to be unleashed by those in the know. As the years passed, the Zlone slipped into obscurity, known only to hardcore drag racers and a handful of collectors. But those lucky enough to have piloted one knew the truth. It was not just a car, but a declaration. A declaration that GM, when it wanted to, could build something so powerful, so advanced, and so singular that the world wouldn't truly understand what it had until decades later. Number 26. 1971 Chevrolet El Camino SS 454 LS5. By the early 1970s, the muscle car wars were beginning to show signs of exhaustion, but the Chevrolet El Camino SS 454 still roared like it was 1969. Combining muscle car aggression with pickup utility, the 1971 El Camino SS 454 was a contradiction on wheels, part hot rod, part hauler, and entirely unforgettable. Equipped with the LS5 variant of the massive 454 cubic inch V8, this beast delivered a factory-rated 360 horsepower and an earth-moving 500 pound-feet of torque. This wasn't just a pickup with a big engine, it shared its underpinnings with the Chevelle SS, meaning it handled and performed like a true muscle car. With a heavy-duty suspension, beefed-up drivetrain, and optional cowl induction hood, the El Camino SS 454 was more than capable of burning rubber while towing a trailer or hauling a load. The power delivery was brutally smooth, especially when mated to the turbo-hydromatic 3-speed automatic or M22 rock crusher 4-speed manual transmission. Despite its performance credentials, the El Camino SS 454 struggled to earn the same respect as its coupe sibling. Its hybrid identity, half car, half truck, left many enthusiasts confused about where it fit in the muscle hierarchy. Purists favored the Chevelle SS, while truck buyers gravitated toward more utilitarian pickups. As a result, many overlooked the El Camino SS 454 as merely a novelty rather than the performance machine it truly was. Adding to its fading memory was the visual similarity between SS and non-SS El Caminos, especially when buyers skipped the optional badging or cowl hood. Many were ordered conservatively, blending into traffic despite having the heart of a street dominator. And as muscle cars faded under insurance pressure and emissions restrictions, the El Camino quietly faded too. Today, however, collectors are beginning to rediscover this misunderstood hybrid. With its unique styling, legendary LS5 power, and everyday utility, the 1971 El Camino SS 454 stands as proof that performance didn't have to sacrifice practicality. It was, and still is, a muscle car that wasn't afraid to get its hands dirty. Number 25. 1970 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS 454. In 1970, Chevrolet introduced a new nameplate meant to rival the likes of the Pontiac Grand Prix and Ford Thunderbird, the Monte Carlo. Designed as a personal luxury coupe, it was elegant, understated, and tailored for the discerning driver who wanted both comfort and power. But hidden within its long hood and formal roofline was something far more ferocious: the optional SS 454 package, which transformed this refined cruiser into a genuine muscle car. Under the hood of the Monte Carlo SS lurked the formidable LS5 454 cubic inch V8, churning out a factory-rated 360 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. This engine was the same one found in the Chevelle SS, giving the Monte Carlo equal muscle under the skin. With its heavy-duty suspension, turbo hydromatic transmission, and optional cowl induction hood, the SS 454 could rocket this big coupe down the quarter mile in under 14 seconds. What made the 1970 Monte Carlo SS unique was its dual personality. On the outside, it was stylish and composed, with chrome accents, hidden windshield wipers, and plush interiors. Yet on the street, it had the brute strength to humble cars that looked far more aggressive. It was a muscle car wearing a tuxedo, and in many ways, that subtlety became its downfall in the memory of enthusiasts. The SS 454 package was expensive and rarely selected, resulting in limited production. Just over 3,800 units were built in its inaugural year. And by the following model year, the option was already being phased out, making the 1970 version the purest and most powerful expression of the Monte Carlo SS. Over time, the Monte Carlo name shifted toward luxury and away from performance, leaving the early SS 454 versions buried beneath layers of soft-roading trims and NASCAR associations. But those who remember the 1970 model know it was something special, a luxury coupe with a monster's heart. In an era full of shouty muscle cars, the Monte Carlo SS whispered, then roared. Number 24. 1969 Oldsmobile Cutless S442. Before the Oldsmobile 442 reached its mythic peak with the monstrous W30 package in 1970, it began its transformation into a muscle icon through the more understated Cutless S442 models of 1969 and 1970. Often overlooked in favor of its later, flasher siblings, the Cutless S442 from this transitional period offered a blend of luxury, balance, and raw V8 performance that many muscle cars lacked. The base engine in the Cutless S442 during this time was a high-compression 400 cubic inch V8 rated at 330 horsepower. Paired with a robust suspension system, optional Muncie 4-speed manual transmission, and a well-tuned chassis, it delivered a driving experience that was both composed and aggressive. This was a car that didn't just go fast in a straight line, it handled with grace, offering one of the most refined rides in the muscle car world. Visually, the Cutless S442 carried itself with understated confidence. It lacked the wild stripes or scoops of its competitors, but that was by design. Oldsmobile aimed for buyers who wanted performance without the adolescent flair. The result was a car that felt more mature, more buttoned up, and in many ways, more usable as a daily driver. Yet this blend of refinement and performance may have contributed to the 442's underappreciated status during these years. Buyers often gravitated toward more flamboyant options from Chevrolet, Pontiac, or Dodge, leaving the 442 in a curious middle ground, not quite a street bruiser, not quite a luxury cruiser. And with the W30 overshadowing these earlier models in both legend and collector value, the Cutless S442 from 1969 to 1970 has largely faded from muscle car lore. But these cars deserve renewed attention. They were the foundation of what would become one of the most respected names in the muscle car pantheon. With their perfect balance of power, drivability, and Oldsmobile engineering excellence, the Cutless S442 of this era was not just a stepping stone, it was a standalone masterpiece. Number 23. 1973 Pontiac Le Mans Sport. By the time 1973 rolled around, the golden age of muscle cars was beginning to tarnish under the weight of rising insurance premiums, federal emission standards, and the looming energy crisis. Yet amid that storm, Pontiac released one final, defiant roar in the form of the Le Mans Sport Coupe, a car that carried more performance heritage than most realized. This version of the Le Mans marked the beginning of GM's Colonnade styling era, but underneath its newly rounded roofline and bulkier body lay the heartbeat of a true muscle car. The most potent configuration of the 1973 Le Mans Sport came with the legendary Super Duty 455 cubic inch V8 engine. Though it was officially rated at just 250 net horsepower due to new SAE rating standards, the Super Duty engine was a brutally overbuilt power plant. With forged internals, reinforced block casting, and high-flow heads, it was designed for racing longevity, not just showroom appeal. In reality, it produced far more power than its rating suggested and was capable of serious performance when tuned properly. This was the same engine that would go on to power the legendary Trans Am SD 455, but for a brief moment, it could also be found in the Le Mans Sport, making it one of the last true muscle cars to wear the Le Mans badge. Pontiac even offered performance gear like the rally suspension, limited-slip rear differentials, and heavy-duty cooling, giving the car real street and strip capability. Yet, despite its potential, the Le Mans Sport with the SD 455 remained in the shadows. Sales were low, in part because buyers were confused by the Le Mans' growing association with family sedans and mid-tier coupe. And with the Trans Am soaking up the spotlight that year, the Le Mans Sport quietly slipped through the cracks. Today, it remains one of the rarest configurations of the Colonnade-era Le Mans. A sleeper in every sense, the 1973 Le Mans Sport had the bones of a muscle car legend, but none of the marketing glory. It was the last time the Le Mans would wear true performance credentials before the name was relegated to commuter duty. Number 22. 1972 Buick Century Stage 1. In 1972, Buick was navigating a changing muscle car landscape. Insurance premiums were rising, horsepower ratings were being converted from gross to net figures, and federal regulations were tightening with each passing year. Yet despite the storm clouds gathering over Detroit, Buick managed to sneak one last fire-breathing beast into its lineup, the Century Stage 1. The Century name had replaced the familiar Skylark moniker for Buick's A-body intermediate line, bringing with it more conservative styling and a more subdued marketing focus. But under the hood, the Stage 1 package offered the same thunderous power plant that had made the GS 455 a legend. At the heart of this sleeper was the 455 cubic inch V8, rated at 270 horsepower net, though real-world output was still well over 350. With massive torque figures, 510 pound-feet in gross terms, it delivered brutal acceleration with a deceptive sense of refinement. The Stage 1 package wasn't just an engine upgrade. It included high-performance cylinder heads, a more aggressive camshaft, better ignition tuning, and a tighter limited-slip rear axle. Buick also made sure the car could handle that power by including heavy-duty suspension components, beefier sway bars, and upgraded cooling systems. This turned what appeared to be a mild-mannered two-door coupe into a tire-shredding street machine. Yet, the Century Stage 1 never gained the same traction in the public eye as its GS-branded predecessors. Much of that had to do with the name change. Enthusiasts simply didn't associate the Century with muscle car prowess. Additionally, Buick had long positioned itself as a luxury brand, and the Century's clean, mature styling didn't scream performance like the GTO or Chevelle. As a result, only a handful of Stage 1 equipped Centuries were sold, and few were preserved. But for those who knew what they were ordering, it was one of the best-kept secrets of the Twilight Muscle era. The 1972 Buick Century Stage 1 was a velvet hammer, a car that hid its savagery beneath a polished exterior. Number 21. 1974 Pontiac Grand Prix SJ. By 1974, the muscle car era was waning, choked by emissions controls, insurance costs, and a global oil crisis that made big engines look like dinosaurs overnight. Yet Pontiac wasn't ready to fully abandon performance, and nestled within its lineup of personal luxury cruisers was a surprising relic of raw American power, the Grand Prix SJ. Often mistaken for nothing more than a stylish boulevard cruiser, the SJ trim actually transformed the Grand Prix into a legitimate muscle machine hiding behind a gentleman's smile. The heart of the 1974 Grand Prix SJ was its optional 455 cubic inch V8 engine, delivering a factory-rated 310 horsepower and well over 500 pound-feet of torque. In an era when many V8s were struggling to crack 200 net horsepower, this brute stood tall. It gave the Grand Prix SJ the ability to smoke its tires with ease while still gliding down the highway in comfort and silence. Unlike its muscle-bound siblings like the GTO or Trans Am, the Grand Prix didn't rely on stripes, spoilers, or hood scoop. Instead, it offered performance wrapped in luxury, bucket seats, deep pile carpeting, faux wood grain, and a long, commanding hood that seemed to stretch into the horizon. The SJ model added performance-focused options such as firmer suspension, wider tires, and improved gearing. It was a muscle car for grown-ups, fast, quiet, and dignified. Despite its strengths, the Grand Prix SJ was rarely recognized for its muscle credentials. It was overshadowed by Pontiac's more aggressive offerings, and its luxury image made enthusiasts overlook the firepower lurking under the hood. Furthermore, as performance numbers began to drop across the board due to stricter emission standards, cars like the SJ were dismissed as vestiges of a dying breed. Today, the 1974 Pontiac Grand Prix SJ remains one of the most overlooked high-performance coupes of its time. It delivered muscle-era thrust with personal luxury finesse, creating a rare blend that few cars achieved then or now. A sleeper in the purest sense, it wore a silk robe over iron fists. Number 20. 1980 Oldsmobile Starfire. By 1980, the muscle car era had been reduced to a shadow of its former glory. High compression, big blocks were gone, fuel economy ruled the day, and most performance badges were little more than nostalgic stickers. But in this bleak landscape, Oldsmobile quietly attempted to inject a bit of its past firepower into a car few would expect, the Starfire. Based on GM's H-body platform, the same one shared with the Chevrolet, Monza, and Buick Skyhawk, the Oldsmobile Starfire was a compact, rear-wheel drive coupe with sporty intentions. Most Starfires were equipped with economy-focused 4- or 6-cylinder engines, but for a brief moment, Oldsmobile offered a 5.7-liter V8 under the hood, a version of the Olds-built 350 cubic inch engine. Though choked by emissions equipment and rated at a modest 180 gross horsepower, it still delivered the kind of low-end torque muscle car fans craved. When paired with the limited-slip rear axle and sport suspension, the V8-equipped Starfire provided surprising performance in a small package. What made the 1980 Starfire stand out wasn't just its engine, but its styling and options. With a long hood, short deck, optional rally wheels, and available tops, it had the looks of a scaled-down Trans Am. Inside, it offered high-back bucket seats, a floor-mounted shifter, and sporty gauges, all designed to evoke the spirit of Oldsmobile's more powerful past. It wasn't just a commuter car, it was trying to be something more. Unfortunately, few took notice. The muscle car crowd had moved on, disillusioned by smog-era compromises, and most buyers saw the Starfire as little more than a dressed-up compact. Sales were limited, and today, surviving examples with the V8 option are nearly extinct. Still, the 1980 Oldsmobile Starfire deserves recognition as a last gasp of performance ambition during one of Detroit's darkest hours. It may not have burned bright, but it tried to keep the flame alive, offering torque, style, and attitude when most had given up. Number 19. 1973 Pontiac Grand Am. In 1973, Pontiac took a bold step toward redefining American performance with the introduction of the Grand Am, a car that dared to combine European-inspired refinement with traditional V8 muscle. At a time when muscle cars were fading and luxury was on the rise, the Grand Am tried to offer both in a single, stylish package. It rode on GM's new Colonnade A-body platform, which brought modern safety features like stronger roof pillars and energy-absorbing bumpers. But beneath that safer, sleeker shell was still the heart of a true performer. The Grand Am could be ordered with several engines, the most potent of which was the optional 400 cubic inch V8 or the rare 455 cubic inch V8, both borrowed from the Firebird and Grand Prix parts bins. Horsepower ratings ranged up to 250 net horsepower, a strong number in a year when emissions regulations had drastically curbed output across the board. Pontiac also gave the Grand Am a European-tuned suspension, radial tires, and power-assisted front disc brakes, making it one of the best-handling domestic cars of its time. Where the Grand Am really distinguished itself was in its design. With its deeply sculpted urethane nose, borrowed from the Firebird formula, and louvered rear-quarter windows, it looked unlike anything else on American roads. Inside, it featured a driver-centric dash, sporty bucket seats, and a level of trim that rivaled more expensive European touring cars. Despite all this innovation, the 1973 Grand Am struggled to find a dedicated audience. Muscle car fans saw it as too soft, while luxury buyers weren't yet ready to embrace Euro-style performance coupes. It fell into a strange middle ground, too advanced for its time, too different to be understood. Today, the Grand Am is rarely mentioned in muscle car conversations, yet it was one of Pontiac's most ambitious creations. The 1973 Grand Am proved that muscle didn't have to be loud and crude. It could be refined, agile, and forward-thinking. And for a fleeting moment, Pontiac built a car that dared to be both. Number 18. 1961 Pontiac 2+2. Before the muscle car era truly ignited with the release of the Pontiac GTO in 1964, there was a lesser-known forerunner that carried the spark of high-performance rebellion, the Pontiac 2+2. Introduced in 1961 as a performance package for the Catalina Coupe and convertible, the 2+2 was Pontiac's early experiment in combining full-size comfort with full-throttle power. While its size may have placed it closer to a luxury cruiser, what lay beneath the surface was nothing short of fierce. The available power plants for the 1961 Pontiac 2+2 included the high-output 421 cubic inch V8, delivering up to 376 horsepower in its most aggressive tri-power configuration. This engine was mated to a variety of transmissions, including the heavy-duty Borg-Warner T10 4-speed manual, giving drivers precise control over a mountain of torque. Pontiac even offered limited slip differentials and performance-oriented gear ratios, making this massive coupe capable of serious straight-line acceleration. In many ways, the 2+2 was a gentleman's street brawler. It carried the elegant lines of a full-size coupe, complete with chrome trim, bench or bucket seats, and upscale appointments. But add in dual exhausts, wide track stance, and that roaring big block, and it could surprise far sportier-looking competitors on the drag strip. It offered a blend of brute strength and road presence that few cars of its time could match. Yet the Pontiac 2+2 would never enjoy the fame of the GTO or Firebird. Its large size worked against it as public perception shifted towards smaller, lighter muscle cars. Even within Pontiac's own lineup, the rise of the mid-sized Le Mans and Tempest left the 2+2 in the shadows. By the late 1960s, the 2+2 name would quietly fade away. But for those who remember the early 60s, it remains a symbol of Pontiac's pioneering spirit. The 1961 Pontiac 2+2 didn't follow trends, it set them. And in doing so, it helped lay the foundation for everything that came after. Number 17. 1973 Oldsmobile Omega. In the early 1970s, General Motors was shifting focus toward compact platforms, hoping to merge practicality with performance in a changing automotive landscape. The Oldsmobile Omega, introduced in 1973, was part of GM's X-Body family, a group that included the Chevrolet Nova, Pontiac Ventura, and Buick Apollo. But unlike its more celebrated siblings, the Omega never quite got the respect it deserved. Built on a rear-wheel drive compact chassis, the Omega had the bones of a muscle car, even if it wore the badge of a conservative commuter. Under the hood, the top-trim Omega could be fitted with a 5.7-liter Oldsmobile Rocket V8, more specifically, a 350 cubic inch engine that delivered solid low-end torque and respectable power for the era. While the horsepower numbers were modest by pre-smog standards, usually ranging around 180 to 200 net horsepower, the engine's responsiveness and durability made it a favorite among street racers in the know. The Omega shared its basic layout and dimensions with the Nova, meaning it had lightweight proportions and solid handling with the right suspension upgrades. Optional rally and GT packages included stiffer springs, sportier tires, and aggressive gearing, allowing the Omega to perform well beyond what its demure styling suggested. With bucket seats, floor shifters, and even a few rally-inspired interior options, it felt more spirited than its name implied. Yet despite its performance potential, the Omega was often dismissed as an economy car in fancy clothes. It lacked the muscle-bound image of a Cutless or 442, and Oldsmobile never aggressively marketed it as a performance model. Most buyers chose it for its reliability and refinement rather than for its power, and so its sleeper potential was largely overlooked. Today, the 1973 to 1975 Oldsmobile Omega remains a rare find in the collector world. But for those who uncover one with the Rocket V8 and performance gear, it becomes clear that this forgotten X-Body had real bite beneath its quiet exterior. In a world obsessed with loud muscle cars, the Omega whispered, then pounced. Number 16. 1973 Buick Apollo. In the midst of the muscle car era's decline, Buick introduced the Apollo in 1973, a compact car intended to blend fuel efficiency, comfort, and restrained styling. Riding on GM's X-Body platform, the Apollo was Buick's take on the increasingly popular idea of a smaller, more practical car that could still deliver respectable performance. To most buyers, it was an upscale alternative to the Chevrolet Nova, designed for economy-conscious drivers who didn't want to sacrifice refinement. But hidden within this genteel package was something unexpected: genuine muscle car DNA. Buick offered the Apollo with a range of engines, and for those who knew where to look, a 5.7-liter, 350 cubic inch Buick-built V8 was on the menu. Though its output was modest on paper, typically around 170 to 200 net horsepower, the engine's torque-rich character and the car's relatively light curb weight gave the Apollo surprising performance chops. Buyers could also option the car with Buick's handling package, which included upgraded springs, stiffer shocks, and improved steering feedback. With rally wheels and radial tires, the Apollo could hustle through curves with confidence, something not often said about compact domestic cars of the era. The interior, especially in higher trims, was classic Buick: wood grain accents, plush seating, and a whisper quiet ride. But if you buried your foot in the throttle, the V8 responded with unmistakable Buick rumble. Unfortunately, the Apollo never earned a performance reputation. Buick never aggressively promoted its muscle potential, and its subdued styling made it easy to overlook in a decade dominated by louder, flashier machines. Most were sold with six-cylinder engines to buyers who never imagined they were sitting behind the wheel of a sleeper. Today, surviving V8-powered Buick Apollos are exceptionally rare. But for those who find one, they'll discover a car that delivered muscle-era feel in a compact, refined package. The 1973 to 1975 Apollo wasn't built to shout, it was built to surprise. Number 15. 1971 GMC Sprint SP. In the early 1970s, GMC quietly dipped its toe into the muscle car waters with a vehicle most people didn't even recognize as a performance contender, the Sprint SP. Based on the same platform as the Chevrolet El Camino, the GMC Sprint was essentially a car-based pickup that offered both utility and surprising speed. But it was the SP trim, offered in 1971 and 1972, that transformed this workhorse into something far more aggressive. Buyers who selected the Sprint SP could equip it with the mighty LS5 454 cubic inch big block V8, rated at 360 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. That kind of power was more than enough to roast the rear tires and outpace many so-called muscle cars of the era. Paired with heavy-duty suspension, power front disc brakes, and either a turbo-hydromatic transmission or a 4-speed manual, the Sprint SP offered legitimate straight-line performance. From a styling standpoint, the Sprint SP closely mirrored the El Camino SS, featuring dual racing mirrors, sport striping, and a domed hood when optioned correctly. But unlike the El Camino, the GMC version flew completely under the radar. There were no flashy badges or national ad campaigns, just a quiet performance machine hiding in plain sight. This made it perfect for those who wanted muscle car performance without drawing attention. However, the Sprint SP suffered from an identity crisis. GMC was traditionally known for trucks, not muscle cars, and few buyers thought to look for performance under a GMC badge. As a result, production numbers were extremely low, and the Sprint SP remains one of the rarest muscle-oriented GM vehicles ever built. Today, the 1971 to 1972 GMC Sprint SP stands as a testament to the hidden gems of the muscle car era. It had all the power and pedigree of its Chevrolet cousin, but none of the fame. And that's exactly what makes it one of the coolest muscle cars you've probably never heard of. Number 14. 1992 GMC Typhoon. In the early 1990s, just as the muscle car identity was fading into retro nostalgia, GMC unleashed something so radical that it barely made sense on paper: the Typhoon. At a time when SUVs were mostly considered utilitarian wagons or off-road adventurers, the Typhoon dared to flip the narrative and become a performance vehicle first and a utility vehicle second. It was based on the two-door Jimmy SUV, but with a formula borrowed from street racers and drag strip regulars. Under its hood sat a turbocharged and intercooled 4.3-liter V6, derived from the standard GMC Vortec engine but heavily re-engineered. With the help of forced induction and a 4-bolt main block, the Typhoon pumped out 280 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque. These numbers were staggering for the time, especially in an SUV weighing just under 4,000 pounds. The result was a 0-60 sprint in just over 5 seconds, quicker than a Ferrari 348 or a Corvette of the same era. The Typhoon was also equipped with an advanced all-wheel drive system that sent 65% of the power to the rear and 35% to the front, improving traction and helping it launch like a rocket in all conditions. Its sport-tuned suspension, lowered ride height, and upgraded brakes made it handle more like a performance coupe than a high-riding SUV. Inside, it came standard with leather seats, air conditioning, and a digital instrument panel, blending muscle with modernity. Despite its astonishing performance, the Typhoon never achieved mainstream success. It was expensive for its time, priced above $30,000, and limited production made it a rare sight on the road. Many enthusiasts couldn't wrap their heads around a fast SUV when muscle cars had always come with 2 doors and a big block V8. Today, the 1992 to 1993 GMC Typhoon is recognized as one of the earliest high-performance SUVs, decades ahead of its time. It proved that muscle didn't have to be loud or large. It could be compact, technical, and shockingly fast. A true muscle car in disguise, the Typhoon redefined what performance could look like. Number 13. 1991 GMC Cyclone. In 1991, GMC shattered expectations with a vehicle that redefined what a pickup truck could be, the Cyclone. Built off the compact Sonoma platform, the Cyclone wasn't meant to haul lumber or tow trailers. It was designed to haul something else entirely: pure, unfiltered speed. With the Cyclone, GMC turned a utility vehicle into one of the fastest street machines of its era, and almost no one saw it coming. At the heart of this black-clad beast was a turbocharged and intercooled 4.3-liter V6, producing 280 horsepower and a pavement-warping 360 pound-feet of torque. Mated to a 4-speed automatic transmission and an all-wheel drive system that split torque 35% front and 65% rear, the Cyclone was a launch-control dream before the term existed. It could rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 4.3 seconds, quicker than a Ferrari 348 or a Corvette ZR1 at the time. Its lowered suspension, performance-calibrated shocks, and 4-wheel anti-lock brakes made it surprisingly nimble, while wide, sticky tires ensured it stuck to the road like a sports car. Yet it maintained the shape and function of a pickup, albeit one with a bed more suited for grocery bags than construction equipment. The Cyclone came only in black, with a monochromatic appearance that made it look menacing and mysterious. The interior featured sport bucket seats, a center console with a floor shifter, and subtle red accents, reflecting its purpose without being flashy. Despite its cutting-edge performance, the Cyclone was produced in limited numbers. Only 2,995 units were built for the 1991 model year. It was too quick to be understood, too niche to be mass-produced, and far too expensive to attract traditional truck buyers. But for those who knew, the Cyclone was the holy grail of performance pickups. Today, the 1991 GMC Cyclone remains one of the most astonishing and underrated performance vehicles ever produced by General Motors. A true muscle car hidden in a pickup body, it turned expectations and rear tires into smoke. Number 12. 1973 Chevrolet Chevelle Laguna S3. When Chevrolet introduced the Laguna in 1973, it was meant to be a more upscale, refined version of the popular Chevelle line. But buried within its stylish colonnade-era sheet metal and luxury aspirations was a performance variant that most people today have forgotten, the Laguna S3. Though it never earned the fanfare of earlier SS models, the S3 quietly carried on the muscle car legacy, even as the rest of the market began to move in a different direction. Available in both 1973 and 1974, the Laguna S3 was more than just a trim upgrade. It could be optioned with Chevrolet's most powerful engines of the day, including the 454 cubic inch LS4 big block V8, which produced up to 270 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. While these figures may seem low compared to the peak of the muscle era, they were still formidable during a time when tightening emissions regulations were strangling performance. The Laguna S3 also boasted significant handling improvements, including radial-tuned suspension, front and rear stabilizer bars, and variable ratio power steering. This made it one of the better driving intermediate cars of its time. The car's aerodynamically rounded front nose, especially in 1974, would later prove invaluable on the NASCAR circuit, where it became a favorite for racing teams due to its wind-cutting design. Despite its real-world capabilities, the Laguna S3 struggled to earn recognition from traditional muscle car fans. Its image was more subdued, aimed at buyers who wanted comfort and style along with performance, which led to it being misunderstood and largely overlooked. Few enthusiasts knew that the same car cruising to the office could dominate on the oval track. Today, the 1973 to 1974 Chevrolet Chevelle Laguna S3 stands as a fascinating muscle luxury hybrid. It bridged the gap between raw performance and emerging refinement. And though it may not roar as loudly in memory, it deserves its place as one of GM's most underrated muscle machines. Number 11. 1990 Chevrolet Cyclone 1000, 500, 454 SS. In 1990, Chevrolet decided to take the performance truck concept seriously, and the result was the Cyclone 1000, 500, 454 SS, a street machine hiding inside a full-size pickup. Built on the Cone 1000, 500 half-ton short bed chassis, this truck wasn't designed for work duty or hauling drywall. It was built to light up rear tires and surprise muscle cars at stoplights across America. Under the hood was the legendary 7.4-liter, 454 cubic inch big block V8, an engine usually found in heavy-duty trucks and Suburbans. In its debut year of 1990, the engine was rated at 230 horsepower and a massive 385 pound-feet of torque. That was more than enough twist to overcome the rear tires and launch the truck with brute force. By 1991, the engine received a performance upgrade, boosting output to 255 horsepower and 405 pound-feet of torque, making the truck even quicker. The 454 SS wasn't just about straight-line performance. It came standard with a sport suspension that included Bilstein shocks, a quicker steering ratio, and a locking rear differential. It rode on unique 15-inch wheels wrapped in fat tires, helping it stay planted through curves better than any full-size pickup had a right to. With a 3-speed turbo-hydromatic transmission and a 3.73 rear axle ratio, the truck launched hard and pulled with authority. Visually, the 454 SS was menacing in its simplicity. Initially offered only in black with red decals and a red interior, it looked like a muscle car wearing a pickup disguise. Later years added more color options, but the essence remained: performance first. Despite its muscle, the 454 SS remained a niche product. It was expensive, drank fuel voraciously, and didn't appeal to traditional truck buyers or purist muscle car fans. But for those who got it, the 1990 to 1993 Chevrolet Cyclone 1000, 500, 454 SS was a factory-built burnout machine that delivered torque, attitude, and the kind of raw charm that defined American performance. Number 10. 1994 Chevrolet Impala SS. In the mid-1990s, Chevrolet pulled off something few expected. They transformed a full-size, four-door sedan into a legitimate muscle car. The result was the reborn Impala SS, produced from 1994 through 1996. At a time when most performance vehicles came in compact or coupe form, the Impala SS offered big block attitude in a full-size executive wrapper. Built on the body platform shared with the Caprice and Buick Roadmaster, the Impala SS took everything familiar about American sedans and injected it with torque, presence, and swagger. Under the hood was the legendary L-Tone V8 engine, a 5.7-liter powerhouse borrowed and slightly detuned from the Corvette. It produced 260 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque, routed through a 4-speed automatic transmission. The result was 0 to 60 times in the low 7-second range and a highway cruiser that could pull hard at any speed. But power was only half the story. The Impala SS featured a lowered suspension, firmer shocks, upgraded sway bars, and wider 15-inch wheels wrapped in high-performance rubber. It also sported four-wheel disc brakes and a limited-slip rear differential, making it far more composed than its size suggested. Visually, it was a masterclass in subtle menace. Available exclusively in black in its debut year, the Impala SS had body-colored trim, D-chrome details, and a blacked-out grille. The only clues to its identity were the unique 5-spoke wheels and the Impala SS badges stamped into the rear quarter panels. Inside, it offered leather seating, digital gauges, and a feel that struck the perfect balance between performance and luxury. Despite rave reviews, the Impala SS was a limited-run experiment that ended after 1996. Fleet sales pressure and shifting corporate priorities meant the performance sedan was shelved, just as it was earning cult status. Today, the 1994 to 1996 Chevrolet Impala SS stands as one of GM's greatest modern sleepers, a muscle car in a business suit that ruled the fast lane with quiet confidence. Number 9. 1970 Hurst Olds 442. In the crowded arena of 1970s muscle cars, few vehicles combined raw power, exclusivity, and luxury quite like the 1970 Hurst Olds. Born from a partnership between Oldsmobile and Hurst Performance, the Hurst Olds represented the pinnacle of what GM could deliver when rules were bent and limits were pushed. While the 442 already had a fearsome reputation, the Hurst Olds went even further, both in performance and in presence. At its core was the monstrous 455 cubic inch rocket V8, the same engine found in the top-spec 442 W30. It was officially rated at 370 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, but as was often the case in that era, real-world output was likely even higher. This torque-rich engine, paired with a specially calibrated turbo-hydromatic 400 transmission and Hurst dual-gauge shifter, gave the car brutal, off-the-line acceleration and refined highway cruising. The 1970 Hurst Olds wasn't just about speed, it was about attitude. Dressed in a striking Firefrost gold over white paint scheme, with black and gold striping, a rear deck spoiler, functional hood scoops, and Hurst badging throughout, it had the look of something serious. Inside, it offered high-back bucket seats, wood-grain trim, and creature comforts not typically associated with street racers. Only 516 units were produced, making it one of the rarest muscle cars of the golden era. It wasn't sold to just anyone. Many were delivered to select buyers and racing enthusiasts who understood the pedigree behind the Hurst name. This scarcity has contributed to its near-mythical status among collectors, but also explains why it was overlooked by many mainstream enthusiasts for years. The 1970 Hurst Olds was a muscle car for those who wanted more than just brute force. It offered refinement, exclusivity, and enough power to humble almost anything on the street. In a world of loud machines, the Hurst Olds spoke with precision and thunder. Number 8. 1970 Oldsmobile 442 W30. In the muscle car wars of the late 1960s and early 1970s, the Oldsmobile 442 W30 stood as a masterclass in controlled fury. And in 1970, it reached its absolute peak, just as government regulations and insurance premiums began to choke the life out of high-performance machines. That year, Oldsmobile delivered a car that didn't just compete with the era's top muscle cars, it often surpassed them. The heart of the W30 was the legendary 455 cubic inch rocket V8. Officially rated at 370 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque, it delivered relentless acceleration from any point on the rev counter. But raw numbers only told part of the story. The W30 engine was hand-assembled, using specially selected components such as a high-lift camshaft, a performance-tuned carburetor, and the famous red inner fender wells that signified something truly special lived under the hood. To put all that power to the pavement, Oldsmobile included a reinforced suspension system, box control arms, stiffer springs, and an available Monte 4-speed manual transmission. The result was a car that could launch hard, corner flat, and stop with confidence, something many muscle cars of the day couldn't claim. With a quarter-mile time in the low 13s, the W30 wasn't just fast for a mid-size coupe, it was blistering. Visually, the W30 could be ordered with bold stripes, functional fiberglass hood scoops with ram air induction, and distinctive badging. But it also retained the subtle elegance that Oldsmobile was known for, making it a rare blend of luxury and lethal performance. Despite its incredible capabilities, the 1970 130 was often overshadowed by louder rivals like the Chevelle SS or the Plymouth Hemi-Cuda. Oldsmobile's image as a more refined brand worked against it in the eyes of thrill-seeking youth. But for those in the know, the W30 wasn't just another muscle car. It was one of the best ever built. A car that could take on the strip or the boulevard with equal poise and power. Number 7. 1974 Pontiac Ventura GTO. By 1974, the golden age of muscle cars was rapidly slipping away. Insurance surcharges, government regulations, and fuel economy concerns had begun to take their toll on performance machines. In response, Pontiac made one last-ditch effort to keep the GTO name alive, but this time on a very different platform. Instead of continuing with the Le Mans-based GTO that had dominated the late 1960s, Pontiac shifted the legendary badge onto the compact Ventura body. At first glance, this change felt like a downgrade. The Ventura was part of GM's X-Body lineup, a cousin to the Chevrolet Nova, Buick Apollo, and Oldsmobile Omega. But Pontiac still gave it heart, offering the GTO package with a 4-barrel, 350 cubic inch V8 rated at 200 horsepower and 300 pounds-feet of torque. A 3-speed manual came standard, but a 4-speed manual and 3-speed automatic were also available for those who wanted more control. The car featured dual exhausts, sport mirrors, unique GTO badging, and a domed hood with a functional shaker scoop borrowed from the Firebird formula. It also came with rally wheels, wider tires, and upgraded suspension components to give it respectable handling and street manners. Inside, the GTO package added a sporty gauge cluster, vinyl bucket seats, and center console, giving it more personality than the base Ventura. Still, the 1974 Ventura GTO struggled to gain traction with buyers. Muscle car fans saw it as a shell of the original, and critics dismissed it as little more than a rebadged Ventura. Fewer than 8,000 units were produced, and the GTO name was quietly retired after just 1 year on the compact platform. Today, the 1974 Pontiac Ventura GTO is remembered more as a footnote than a legend. But for those who look deeper, it represents a brave attempt to preserve muscle spirit in a time when performance was under siege. It might not have had the size of its predecessors, but its soul was still GTO. Number 6. 1989 Pontiac Turbo Trans Am TA4. In 1989, Pontiac was celebrating 2 decades of Trans Am performance, and instead of simply slapping on special paint and calling it a day, they did something extraordinary. For the 20th anniversary of the Trans Am, Pontiac partnered with Buick to create one of the most underestimated muscle cars of the modern era, the Turbo Trans Am, also known internally as the TA4. What emerged was a machine that blended stealth, speed, and sophistication in ways few expected. Rather than using the usual V8 found in third-generation Firebirds, Pontiac installed the turbocharged 3.8-liter V6 from the Buick Grand National and GNX. This intercooled engine was officially rated at 250 horsepower and 340 pound-feet of torque, but most real-world dyno runs revealed those figures were very conservative. The lightweight Firebird platform, combined with the torque-heavy turbo V6 and a 4-speed automatic transmission, produced staggering results. In testing, the Turbo Trans Am consistently hit 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds and ran the quarter mile in the high 13s. Pontiac refined the chassis with performance-tuned suspension, larger sway bars, and WS6 handling upgrades, making it not just fast in a straight line but composed in corners. Unique 16-inch gold mesh wheels and subtle badging set it apart visually, though its all-white exterior and leather interior gave it a more mature and understated appearance. Unlike many over-the-top anniversary editions, this one let the performance do the talking. Despite its incredible capabilities, the 1989 Turbo Trans Am remained a niche machine. Fewer than 1,650 units were built, and many buyers at the time overlooked it in favor of traditional V8 muscle. Pontiac never repeated the formula, and as the third-gen Trans Am ended production, the turbocharged version faded into obscurity. But those who know recognize the Turbo Trans Am as one of the quickest American cars of its era. Quiet, composed, and brutally fast, it was the perfect blend of technology and tradition. A future classic that earned its stripes not through noise, but through speed. Number 5. 1977 Pontiac Firebird Formula 400 WS6. In 1977, the Pontiac Firebird lineup was flying high, thanks in large part to the nationwide success of the Trans Am and its starring role in pop culture. But just beneath the Trans Am's flashy decals and screaming chicken hood lived a quieter, more balanced alternative, the Firebird Formula 400, especially when equipped with the rare WS6 performance handling package. While the Trans Am got the spotlight, the Formula 400 WS6 quietly carved its own place as a true driver's car. The Formula 400 came equipped with a 400 cubic inch V8, rated at around 180 to 200 horsepower, depending on emissions equipment and transmission choice. Though that might seem modest by earlier muscle car standards, the torque-heavy engine still delivered satisfying acceleration, especially in a car that emphasized handling finesse over brute force. Where the Formula 400 truly stood out was with the introduction of the WS6 option, an innovative package that turned the Firebird into a corner-carving machine. The WS6 performance package included upgraded sway bars, firmer shocks and springs, quicker steering ratio, and notably, the addition of 15 by 7-inch snowflake aluminum wheels wrapped in Goodyear radial tires. Pontiac engineers tuned the suspension for exceptional balance and feedback, and magazine tests at the time praised it as one of the best-handling American cars available. It was a muscle car that could do more than just go fast in a straight line. It could dance through corners with confidence. Despite its capabilities, the 1977 Formula 400 WS6 was often overlooked. Buyers gravitated toward the louder, more flamboyant Trans Am, and the Formula's understated styling and lack of aggressive graphics made it invisible to casual enthusiasts. As a result, far fewer were built, and even fewer survive today in original condition. Yet the Formula 400 WS6 proved that Pontiac still cared about performance during the malaise era. It was a sophisticated, well-balanced machine hiding in plain sight. And for those who took the time to look past the decals, it offered one of the purest driving experiences of its generation. Number 4. 1965 Buick Wildcat S. Between 1965 and 1970, the Buick Wildcat S quietly prowled American streets, hiding brute power beneath layers of luxury. While Buick was often seen as GM's refined, comfort-oriented division, the Wildcat S proved that sophistication and street performance could live in the same body. It was a full-size coupe that could take on muscle-bound midσizers and surprise them with raw torque and elegant confidence. The Wildcat S was offered with a series of high-displacement V8 engines, but the highlight came with the introduction of the 430 cubic inch and later the 455 cubic inch big block V8s. These engines produced as much as 370 horsepower and 510 pound-feet of torque, figures that could easily roast the rear tires of any lightweight competitor. While the car tipped the scales at over 4,000 pounds, it used that torque to move like a much smaller vehicle. The S in Wildcat S didn't stand for sport officially, but it might as well have. This trim added heavy-duty suspension components, dual exhausts, a performance axle ratio, and sometimes even bucket seats and a center console, depending on how it was optioned. Despite its luxury car silhouette, the Wildcat S was built for performance-minded drivers who didn't want to sacrifice comfort. On the outside, the Wildcat had an understated presence, long, lean, and muscular, without being overstyled. It didn't scream for attention with wild stripes or scoops, but it had a commanding road presence that exuded authority. Inside, it featured plush seating, wood grain accents, and high-end materials, making it one of the most comfortable ways to experience big block acceleration. Today, the 1965 to 1970 Buick Wildcat S is largely forgotten, overshadowed by smaller, more aggressive muscle cars. But for those in the know, it remains a sleeper of the highest order. A gentleman's muscle car with the heart of a lion and the manners of a diplomat. Number 3. 1965 Buick Riviera GS Executive Express. In 1965, Buick released one of the most elegant and underrated performance cars of its era, the Riviera Grand Sport, often referred to by insiders as the Executive Express. At a time when muscle cars were becoming increasingly loud, brash, and youth-oriented, the Riviera GS catered to a different kind of enthusiast, one who craved speed but wrapped in sophistication. This was a car designed for the boardroom by day and the boulevard by night. Under its long, sculpted hood sat Buick's infamous nailhead V8 engine, displacing 425 cubic inches and pushing out a factory-rated 360 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque. When equipped with dual Carter AFB 4-barrel carburetors, the Riviera GS could accelerate with authority, delivering silky smooth power in a way that felt almost effortless. This was muscle, not in the form of brute force, but in polished, refined delivery. The Riviera GS also came standard with a performance axle ratio, heavy-duty suspension components, and a limited slip differential, making it far more capable in spirited driving than most full-size cars of its time. Its distinctive clamshell, hidden headlights, and sharply styled rear fenders gave it a presence that was bold without being obnoxious. Inside, it was all business and comfort. Bucket seats, a floor-mounted console, wood trim, and a sweeping dash gave it the feel of a high-end European GT. Despite all this, the 1965 Riviera GS never quite achieved muscle car stardom. It was too luxurious, too quiet, and too mature for the youth-driven market that worshipped the GTO and Chevelle. As a result, it flew under the radar, appreciated by few but beloved by those who understood what it really was. Today, the Riviera GS is recognized by collectors as one of the greatest personal luxury performance coupes ever built. It didn't need stripes or screaming chickens to make a statement. It just needed a stretch of open road and a driver who understood that true power wears a tailored suit. Number 2. 1970 Buick GS 455 Stage 1. In 1970, the American muscle car war reached its most ferocious peak, and Buick, usually known for its refinement and restraint, decided to unleash a monster. That monster was the GS 455 Stage 1, a car that didn't just match its more famous rivals, it quietly obliterated them in one key area: torque. With its sophisticated engineering, understated styling, and brutal straight-line performance, the Stage 1 was a gentleman's street brawler, quick to silence doubters with a twitch of the throttle. At the heart of the GS Stage 1 was Buick's massive 455 cubic inch V8, factory rated at 360 horsepower. But the real headline figure was the torque, an astonishing 510 pound-feet, making it the highest factory torque rating of any muscle car in that era. Thanks to a higher compression ratio, larger valves, a radical camshaft, and special cylinder heads, the Stage 1 engine delivered explosive mid-range power. When paired with the Monte 4-speed or turbo-hydromatic transmission and a 3.64 limited-slip rear axle, the GS could sprint from 0 to 60 in just over 5 seconds and conquer the quarter mile in the low 13s. Yet it didn't look like a race car. With clean lines, minimal badging, and restrained colors, the GS 455 Stage 1 was the ultimate sleeper. It could be ordered with all the luxury appointments Buick buyers expected: air conditioning, power windows, cruise control, all while hiding one of the fiercest engines ever stuffed into an A-body chassis. Despite its staggering performance, the GS Stage 1 never received the same level of recognition as the GTO, Chevelle SS, or Boss Mustang. Buick's image as a brand for older, more conservative drivers worked against it in the eyes of young enthusiasts. As a result, many GS Stage 1 cars were driven daily, used gently, and forgotten by the muscle car community. But today, the 1970 Buick GS 455 Stage 1 is finally being recognized for what it was: one of the fastest, most sophisticated muscle cars of its time. It didn't shout, it struck. and when it did, nothing else came close. Number 1. 1965 Buick Skylark Grand Sport. In 1965, the muscle car scene was erupting across America, with Pontiac's GTO grabbing headlines and Chevrolet's Chevelle SS making waves. But quietly entering the arena was Buick's answer to the horsepower race, the Skylark Grand Sport. It was the brand's very first serious attempt at building a street-legal muscle car, and though it lacked the marketing flash of its rivals, it packed a punch that demanded respect. The heart of the Skylark Grand Sport was Buick's legendary nailhead V8, displacing 401 cubic inches and officially rated at 325 horsepower and 446 pound-feet of torque. This engine, originally developed for full-size models, was shoehorned into the mid-size Skylark, creating a combination of light body weight and big block power that turned heads at stoplights and drag strips alike. With available 3-speed manual, 4-speed manual, or super turbine automatic transmission, the Grand Sport could hit 60 miles per hour in under 8 seconds, a stunning figure for the time. What made the Skylark Grand Sport special wasn't just its straight-line performance, but its mannerisms. It delivered power in a refined, composed way, true to Buick's brand identity. It featured better sound insulation, improved interior materials, and a more mature exterior than most muscle machines, offering buyers performance without sacrificing comfort or elegance. Visually, it carried Grand Sport badging, red-line tires, and subtle cues that hinted at its power, but never screamed. It was a car for drivers who wanted to go fast but didn't feel the need to show off. That same subtlety may be why the car has faded into obscurity today. It was overshadowed by flashier competitors and underpromoted by Buick itself. Yet the 1965 Buick Skylark Grand Sport deserves its place among the muscle car greats. It was the quiet origin of Buick performance, a car that set the tone for later legends like the GS 455 Stage 1. Refined, relentless, and radically underrated, the Grand Sport was Buick's first and finest shot at muscle dominance.